Episode 343, Cranking Up the Heat. This is the Change Underground. I'm your host, John. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. And I'm back. A month that's just disappeared from my personal timeline. I hope all my listeners are well, because it's great to feel like I've got at least 1 foot back in the land of the living. Thanks for your patience. And what a month we've just lived through as a species. From the New York Times, dated 6th of July 2023, quote, "The past 3 days are quite likely the hottest of Earth's modern history," scientists said on Thursday, as an astonishing surge of heat across the globe continued to shatter temperature records from North America to Antarctica. The spike comes as forecasters warn that the Earth could be entering a multi-year period of exceptional warmth driven by 2 main factors: continued emission of heat-trapping gases, mainly caused by humans burning oil, that is, gas and coal, and the return of El Niño, a cyclical weather pattern, end quote. So that's all good then. Wait, what? Things are proceeding pretty much as forecast by the IPCC, or even more quickly than that. This does not bode well for the species. Heatwaves, despite their appearance of relative calm compared to bushfires, cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes and floods, are actually more deadly than all of these. Not the daytime temperatures as such, although they can be killers too. It's the failure of temperatures to decline overnight. That's the more fatal effect. And they are occurring with greater frequency and intensity. From the journal Science of the Total Environment comes an article entitled "Heatwaves Intensification in Australia, a Consistent Trajectory Across Past, Present and Future" by Trancoso et al. Quote, "Heatwaves underwent major increases in the 2000s in comparison to previous decades. Heatwaves have intensified in the past and are projected to increase faster in the future. Heatwaves may be 85% more frequent if global warming increases from 1.5 to 2 degrees C. Heatwaves may last up to a month if global warming increases from 1.5 to 3 degrees." End quote. This is yet another worrying effect of climate change. The knock-on effects aren't all that pleasant either. If we think this through from first principles, we come up with some very unpleasant outcomes. Increased mortality from the events themselves, especially in the very young and the elderly, and this effect could be will be exacerbated at lower levels of economic capacity. The poor people can't afford aircon argument. Higher temperatures result in more evaporation of water, falling dam reserves, less rainfall, increased release of CO2 from bare soils, increased likelihood of wildfires. This in turn leads to less tree cover and increasing temperatures, feeding back into warmer climates and more heat waves. Higher temperatures, wildfires and smoke pollution, as seen in North America in the last month from the fires in Canada, leading to even more premature deaths from air pollution. And added to this comes the piece from Vox Media dated the 27th of June 2023 and entitled "The Alarming Decline of Earth's Forests in 4 Charts" by Benji Jones. Quote, "Over the last decade, dozens of companies and nearly all large countries have vowed to stop demolishing forests, a practice that destroys entire communities of wildlife and pollutes the air with enormous amounts of carbon dioxide. A big climate conference in Glasgow in the fall of 2021 produced the most significant pledge to date. 145 countries, including Brazil, China and Indonesia, committed to halt and reverse forest loss within the decade. Never before, it seems, has the world been this dedicated to stopping deforestation. And yet forests continue to fall." End quote. I'll leave you to follow the link in the show notes to see the charts. Yes, they are very depressing, as you might imagine. I'll just stick to the words. We're in a prisoner's dilemma at the moment. Let me explain that. From the Wikipedia page, Prisoner's Dilemma. Quote, "2 members of a criminal gang are arrested and imprisoned. Each prisoner is in solitary confinement with no means of speaking to or exchanging messages with the other. The police admit they don't have enough evidence to convict the pair on the principal charge. They plan to sentence both to a year in prison on a lesser charge. Simultaneously, the police offer each prisoner a Faustian bargain. If he testifies against his partner, he'll go free, while the partner will get 3 years in prison on the main charge. Oh yes, and there is a catch. If both prisoners testify against each other, Both will be sentenced to 2 years in jail. The prisoners are given little time to think this over, but in no case may either learn what the other has decided until he has irrevocably made his decision. Each is informed that the other prisoner is being offered the same deal. Each prisoner is concerned only with his own welfare, with minimising his own prison sentence." End quote. In fact, the whole climate change thing is a prisoner's dilemma. If one country acts first, it may suffer economic consequences. Now, these may, I would argue, would lead to better economic conditions, but the fear is acting first would be a disaster. If everyone did the right thing, in inverted commas, everyone benefits. But equally, if no one does anything other than issue statements and continue to cut down tree cover, we're all in the poo and getting deeper by the day. There's a link between heatwaves and deforestation, as there is between increasing greenhouse gases and heatwaves. To quote someone whom I can't recall at the moment, everything is connected to everything else. Let's not be completely negative though. Things are changing for the better. They are just not happening quickly enough. Even if all the greenhouse gases were no longer being emitted tomorrow, we still have the lagging effects of the current CO2 and other greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere. The obvious, quick, reliable solution to this is to change the way the world produces food. That does not mean lab meats and vegan diets, it means regenerative techniques integrating livestock and plant production, in effect to decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil, which we may have all heard of before. We have the technologies to do this. We have the ability to decarbonise the energy systems of the world. We lack the cohesive actions by all countries to actually do the job required. Years ago, in episode 234, I discussed Charles Massey's work on soil carbon, and his maths suggested 3 to 5 years of intensive conversion to regenerative soil carbon producing techniques would suck most of the extra CO2 out of the atmosphere that we've added as a species since 1750. To do this would require increased soil carbon sinks by 2 to 3% across 65 to 75% of agricultural land. A doable thing, I would suggest. We have a solution, we have the technology, we have ways of disseminating both, so why the hell are we still cutting down trees and allowing the poor, the elderly and the infants to fry in heat waves? Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back next week. This has been a JM Podcasting Services production. Link in the show notes.